fascinating area, this, in terms of people always think about their boat show stands, and then you start to sort of really delve into like all the stuff, especially I have heard about when boat shows have been brought down afterwards, or events generally, and just like the amount of rubbish that's being picked up and the amount of stuff that's left behind. And you know, and I think the sort of real aim of this is like to really show you like how you can come to boat life and future boat shows, and rethink maybe the way that you do your stand. So this is, yes, as I said, it's just 12 tips. I'm going to make them as like containable as possible so that no one feels overwhelmed by this. So just to give you a backdrop, this is what are the current impacts of the events industry. Now, this isn't just the boat world. This is the much wider industry. This is just to give you an idea of the impacts we're dealing with. So the UK events industry emits 1.2 billion kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent, what sort of greenhouse gases that they say equivalent, because there's loads of gases that come under carbon dioxide equivalent, which is the equivalent of the entire carbon footprint of Malta. To give you an idea, so one country's entire carbon footprint is what the events industry emits every single year, which is quite terrifying. On average, a single attendee, 5.76 kilograms of waste is produced per day per attendee. Is an event as a general stat, which 85% of it ends up in landfill. Just think of the amount of waste coming out of these events, that's going directly into landfill, probably only after 3 days of use. The other one that actually, and this was me just digging into sort of research, but actually 60% of literature handed out at events go straight into landfill. People put it into their bags and then throw it away. So regardless of anything else, just think of the amount of money that, companies spend on literature. And I've completely been one of those people, when I used to work for Sunsail, spending all that money on literature to hand out. But people go, oh, brilliant, shove it in their bag, and then, probably throw it away when they get home. So that's something else to bear in mind. And then travel is enormous, and this is across everything in terms of environmental footprint of companies as a whole. Travel always seems to be a big area of people's footprint, and this is very much like the events as well. So 3% of the entire world's carbon footprint is people traveling to and from events, and that's both exhibitors and customers. So everyone always thinks, God, this is going to cost me more money. In all fairness, actually, the reality of lowering the impact of your stand actually generally makes better financial sense. Like that's actually, which is probably it, music to your ears in many respects. So here are the top tips. The first one is accommodation. We recently did a stand activation for someone at the NEC at the National Snow Show, so slightly other end of the spectrum, dealing with people from the cold stuff. But they basically, we looked into all the different type of accommodation options, and actually your carbon footprint from staying in a shared Airbnb for your team. Now everyone can have their own rooms. It doesn't mean you have to all be sharing rooms. Near the NEC was the most effective way of lowering your impact. There's a huge amount of impact that goes into where you and your team stay. Also, if that's not an option, there are also an option to find an eco hotel. But basically, quite a lot of the hotels in and around the NEC and Birmingham are sort of high carbon footprint solutions. So just think about that when you're thinking of where your team are going to stay, because that's part of your event stand, is also where you stay and how you get there. The next big area is stand design. Now, graphics. Now, this is a really interesting one. Everyone has graphics. It's a hard one to get away from. But it's rethinking the way that you design your graphics, and that could be pop-ups, or it could be big framework graphics. The idea is to design graphics that will be relevant and last 5 to 10 years at least. And how do you do that? How do you create a timeless design that really sits within that? And this needs to be thought in terms of imagery and copy. So everything that you choose in terms of imagery that you use, as well as copy, you've got to think, will that still be relevant in a few years' time? So the kind of thing is if you suddenly put a competition on there, you've instantly made that, you know, only relevant for 1 year. Or if you've got, if you're a clothing company and you are literally promoting one particular jacket that won't be sold next year because it's come end of line, or you said set dates, you're like, come and download our brochure for 2022. So things like that make it really, you've got a set time limit within it, both from imagery and copy. So you've got to really think outside the box of that, and it takes some creativity to think along that kind of line. Choose durable print material to print on. I've got a list of suppliers based on this that you can use, which I'll give to you. But there is 2 companies called Seacourt and Greenhouse Graphics. They have really worked on producing graphics that are on really durable material, but also that can be recycled at the end of life. So you can literally send it back, they recycle it, and then make it into a new graphic for you or someone else. So, but also the real thing for them is that it lasts a really decent amount of time, you know, and in good condition as well. As I said, don't choose imagery or products that will be unavailable to buy within a, you know, won't be, you can't buy within a year, and that instantly makes it, you know, a time frame of, you know, much smaller time frame for what that graphic will last for. Think diversity, you know, that's another big thing, is like, you know, the world is changing so rapidly. So when you're actually choosing imagery for people, think about all the different kinds of people that are in boating right now and could be in boating in the future. You know, really having that inclusivity and that diversity incorporated into that is really, really key. And also potentially attract many more customers, because you're actually, you know, people can see themselves on a boat if they see that, you know, their kind of people effectively on, you know, on a boat as well. It's really about imagining what you would feel like. Don't include any dates. Don't use trend terminology, as it may well be out of fashion. A kind of key one which kind of fits within this is the term woke. You know, will woke still be around in 2 years' time? I don't know. I have no idea. But, you know, or some of the COVID terminology that's come out this year. In 5 years' time, will anyone know what some of that COVID terminology will be? So it's just something to bear in mind in terms of that, in terms of using jargon and short-term wording or imagery that people might not get, or actually make you feel out of date as well, regardless of that. And the other one is, as I said, don't include a competition that has a finite date. Now, there is one area around this that you can get around it, is you can include a competition. So you can say, enter our competition with a QR code, and I'll go into this a bit later, but it doesn't have to have a finite date, because you can actually update those competition details each year. I actually just added in an image here of the sailing boat at the bottom. Now, this is a kind of example of an image that would be quite timeless. It's very obviously a sailing boat, unless suddenly in 5 years' time we're not going to have sailing boats with masts. It's quite a sort of, you know, it doesn't give an era specifically this. Now, this is actually something that we use for Sunsail. Because of that perspective, we didn't feel this image would go out of date very quickly, and that's why we absolutely loved it. And it's this kind of imagery that we're saying, is like being a bit more clever with imagery that has that timeless feel. You don't look at that and go, God, that was definitely a 2020 image. Well, it probably wasn't, actually, because most of us weren't even allowed out on the water, but it was, you know, you don't look at that and see that. So just start thinking along those kind of lines. Or go completely brave and think completely outside the box. Do you even need graphics? Are there other ways that you can depict what you do, and, you know, as a company, without even having graphics there to start with? These were just some ideas I found. They do love a lot of plant-based stuff, but it's amazing what you can actually now rent. You know, we rented a ski lift chair for the stand as one of the things that makes it quite fun. But it was it's these kind of examples, and this aquarium that you can build into a table. So this was a live aquarium that was used as a table that, you know, would be a talking point for your stand. So when you're thinking about stand design, and again, I'll go into this a bit later as well, but it's like, how do you maximize engagement that makes you feel so different from everyone else around you that people pick you out as something, but also offers a talking point? You know, if you support a conservation project, something like an aquarium as part of your stand could be a really interesting perspective. Or you could do seagrass, or you could do, I mean, there's loads of different things you could do, but it's really, you know, do you have to have graphics at all? I mean, this is just the kind of thing, and this is more on the engagement side, but it also means that that'll be less graphics, you know, as a whole being used, because as I said, if you don't use one of the companies like Seacourt or Greenhouse Graphics that know how to recycle their graphics, there is that risk of them going into landfill, of which there is, you know, an awful lot. Transport is a huge part of your stadium footprint, like how you get to and from the show and how all your bits get to and from the show is monumental, and your teams. It is, I mean, literally it took up, again, go back to the footprint that we brought together. You know, it is a huge part of it. Now, if you're not cycling or walking, I have put this in brackets, because actually we were going to do a whole social media campaign around this, around me cycling to the NEC from the South Coast to go to the snow show. Feel free to take that. Feel to take that as a marketing campaign if you so wish. But it was a talking point. It was a bit of a marketing campaign as a run up to the NEC as well. Unfortunately, I had to go to a funeral the next day, so I couldn't actually cycle, which was a real shame. But I ended up taking a train. So train is best if you can't walk, cycle, or I don't know, maybe ride a horse. If you are taking a lot of equipment in, which I can guarantee you probably are, think about renting an electric one. The NEC has lots of electric, well, it has an electric capacity to be able to charge vans and cars. Again, within my supplier list, I've got a list of electric van suppliers that can help you with that. And if you can't, and if you do have a car or van that's not electric, at least try and get as many people into it as possible, if it is a fossil fuel one. So, you know, not everyone driving up in separate cars, thinking how you can get everyone into one vehicle as much as possible. First, as I keep on saying, it's usually the most financially viable option. It means that you actually save a lot of money if everyone goes in one car anyway. So think of things like that. And this is also with your towing boats up there, if you're taking them for a boat display. If you've got suppliers coming who are going to be delivering your goods, maybe you've got someone building your stand who's a supplier, it's really important. Part of how you measure your impact is how, you know, your suppliers as well. So how they deliver your goods is also equally as important as you doing it yourself. So ask your suppliers, how are they getting there? What are they using? Because that's a really, really important part of your footprint. So just make sure when you're doing that, you just think train, electric, shared. Those are the kind of things we're really looking into to lower your transport impact. Now, merchandising giveaways, I'm really sorry to say, are predominantly pointless. I mean, I haven't seen actually many. You think of the amount of just useless things, and think from your show perspective, when you've actually been a customer rather than someone owning a company, when you've walked around, how many things have you genuinely been given that you have used a year later and still using? How many things do you get rid of afterwards? So my sort of rule of thumb is you ask yourself 3 questions. Now, I'm not saying that you absolutely don't do branded merchandise, but it's just about actually at least creating something that is really useful. So first of all, is it useful? Will it improve the customer's life? Is it something that you genuinely know that they would want or need? Secondly, does it fit your sustainability ethos? You know, if you are saying that you are reducing waste, then probably handing out a lot of, I don't know, like plastic cups. I'm trying to think, I can't even think, I'm sorry, I'm having a complete mind, but if you end up handing out something that goes completely against what you're saying your company is against, this is really where sometimes we have problems where marketing and a company doesn't align in terms of what they're trying to say. So just bear that in mind as well. And will the giveaway help improve a current issue? So the kind of examples, if you're handing out a reusable coffee mug, that's actually helping prevent perhaps your customers from throwing away you know, using endless disposable coffee cups. Maybe it's something for the show as well. You get them to have a disposable, have a reusable coffee cup that they can use at the show and future shows as well. And maybe that's how you do it. But if you're going to do something like that, what's the likelihood another brand will be handing out the same object? So, you know, that's about creativity. That's about really thinking creatively as well when you're doing it. But as I said, if you are thinking merchandise and you think, I've got to have it, ask those 2 questions. Otherwise, by not having it, you're saving money as well. So there's many other ways of getting your branding out there. And, you know, without it going, you know, being taken away by the customer and then not being used at all. Now, another sort of area that has been like, it's fascinating. And, you know, as I said, like when you're thinking about your stand design or other elements, there's so much that you can rent these days. First of all, it works out so much more economical renting than it does to actually buy quite a lot of things. And it means that through that, you can be as creative as you want. Now, I mentioned about the ski chair. The ski chairlift, the chairlift chair from a ski resort being on there. Now, next year we might have something completely different on the Snow Show stand. But that's the thing, it feels fresh and new every single year by thinking about renting stuff. Then you're not having to commit a large amount of expense, but you're keeping that creativity up. You're keeping that talking point with your customers and something, you know, they can have photos taken on something. I mean, some of the stuff that I see that you can rent is just extraordinary. Plus, it means you can keep up with the latest trends, if there are trends, you know, around Instagram, everyone's an Instagrammable thing. So you can have like a fun thing to get people to post their photos on Instagram through renting something quite different. And also it means that you can keep up to date with technology. So you can really play with new technology, which again can generally cost quite a lot of money. But if you're renting it, it works out so much cheaper on an annual basis. Clothing is another huge area of waste for events. It's, you know, so much is only used for 3 days and then it's thrown away. And, you know, or teams change from year to year. And so they use it for 3 days, then someone changes and, you know, maybe they had your names and branded onto every single t-shirt. And then that, you know, that piece of equipment is no longer being used. So if you're going to actually use clothing, which absolutely I totally agree is really important part of an event activation, just consider these elements. Ensure your clothing comes from a responsible clothing manufacturer. There's some amazing companies. Again, I've put them on the supplier checklist. There's a wonderful one on the Isle of Wight called T-Mill, where you can brand up your clothing. And the great thing is that you can then send anything that you no longer need back to them. They actually shred the cotton, recycle it, and then make it into a new t-shirt. So there's nothing going into the bin, which is just amazing. So they're one of the examples of a clothing manufacturer that absolutely is sort of really going strong with this. If you are branding the items, only use logos and copy that will be timeless, e.g. no dates. So again, it's going really down that timeless route. Don't put something like Boat Life 2022, because therefore that item becomes out of date very, very quickly. So just think timeless, think of logos and copy that you haven't changed for years. Choose an item of clothing that's not too fitted, so it can fit a number of people if team members change. Again, it's just giving you that flexibility that if you do lose a team member and you get a new one in, by being a bit more flexible with sizing. Now you can absolutely, I'm not saying that everything should be extra large if you've got very small members, because they might not be impressed with you, but it's just being a bit more flexible with the sizing so that you've got a bit more flexibility either side if there are some of those team changes. Ensure the item, well, the clothing item is durable and, you know, of good quality. So really looking for like durable materials. Is it a brand that is known to produce good quality equipment, or is it a brand you've never heard of, you don't know anything about, you don't know whether it will last longer, or it will go see-through, which is obviously a big thing, especially with white t-shirts. They often go see-through if they're not very good quality. So that's another thing to bear in mind. Choose neutral colours or brand colours. That's, you know, orange might be in one year, but out the next. Now, generally, you do tend to choose brand colours. I completely appreciate that. But if you don't and you go slightly wacky, just again, it's thinking down the sort of what comes in and out of fashion or trends or out of date. It's choosing, you know, colors that will feel eternally stylish or in fashion or whatever you want to call it, you know, so it doesn't feel out of date very quickly. Again, there's this huge concept, and I did dip my toe into the fashion industry from time to time. And it's really driving towards style rather than fashion, because fashion means that people can throw stuff away. It comes into fashion for 2 weeks and goes out of fashion, and it's then thrown away because you're suddenly considered out of, you know, it's considered old and, you know, not up to date. And there's a real drive towards style and actually choosing something that is long-term stylish, that doesn't ever go out of fashion. And, you know, prime example of that is the good old polo shirt that is so popular in the marine industry. You know, that's a really, you know, prime example of a sort of stylish piece, because, you know, it has definitely lasted a very long time. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. This was actually the graphic we designed for EcoSki, my client in the ski world. I wanted to kind of show this because partly it shows the timelessness. We didn't have any people in it, we didn't, so therefore it meant that we weren't tied to any fashion. You know, the imagery wouldn't go out of date in terms of what was in and out of fashion in terms of ski clothing. You weren't set to either skiers or snowboarders, but it sort of evoked that want. I mean, this is only one side of it. It was much bigger than this. I've really cropped it down, but it really evoked you to just want to be in, and it's an empty ski piece. So it just makes you want to get out there and be on that emptiness, because that's a bliss place to be. And what we actually did was we described the concept around their main model in the language that skiers talk in, which is pieced colors. So green is the easiest one, and black is the hardest. So that whole model was repair first, then buy second hand, then rent, and then new is your final bit. And that's the sort of order of like how much impact you can have when you're buying clothing or thinking about buying clothing. So we really spoke the language, which, you know, I know marine brands are really good at, is, you know, speaking the language of their customers when they're doing it. But we added QR codes in here, which, instead of, as I said, about handing out all this material, handing out all these brochures and everything, we put these QR codes on, which go directly to that page on the website. And it was so popular with customers. Like, everyone got it. Those who didn't get it initially got it pretty quickly when we explained. When they asked, could they take away a brochure or something, we said, no, you just do this. And they said, God, what a brilliant idea. It means I have to carry less. So it went down really, really well. So, you know, part of that is just the amount of paper that is created with stands or sort of on stands. It's like, how can you think differently? Now, QR codes are one element. iPads are a great way of capturing customer data. You can also you can have a QR code on your, if you are to use a graphic, at the back, and that will take you through to a competition where people can literally just enter their own details. They don't feel like anyone's looking over their shoulder, so it's a real privacy thing, which I think people really like as well. And it lets customers view your products online if you've got more in your store than you don't have. So that previous photo I showed you with the Garmin stand, you know, the fact that you could tap on and go and see other elements of the Garmin range. And also, you know, really staying away from electronic receipts. There's so many products out there like Zettel, which allow you to send electronic receipts. So that's another way of reducing paper on your stand. I think it's one of my biggest bugbears is people at events carrying around disposable coffee cups and water bottles all the time. Having actually been at the NEC literally 3 months ago, I know that they have got water fountains, and that all of their stands actually fill up your reusable coffee mugs and tea mugs. So make sure that every single person on your stand who's working on your team, you and yourself, all use reusable coffee mugs and reusable water bottles throughout. That will reduce your waste tenfold, and also will set an amazing example for all of your customers. company here. Now you can either, I'm sure, I can guarantee that everyone on your team will have both a reusable water bottle and coffee mug. However, if they do not, you can always get branded ones. Again, taking the very same line as your clothing, is to have a choose one that is durable, that's very easy to disinfect, you know, and the one can be used, and you can brand it as well, you know, throughout. This actual photos of Ocean bottle, they're amazing. I've got them down as one of the suppliers as well on the list that I can send you all afterwards. And it is it's brilliant. They collect I think about 10 kilos of plastic from the ocean for every bottle you buy, so it's quite a nice like tie-in. The next one is measure. You can't go anywhere if you don't know where you started. So I always use the analogy of someone losing weight. If you say you're going to lose weight and then someone asks you further down the line, well, how have you done? And you didn't start by weighing yourself to start with, how do you know how much? You don't know where you started, so how do you know where you're going to? And I think that's roughly the same analogy with a stand. If you really want to take this sort of seriously and really work out where your biggest impact is, then actually measuring your carbon footprint of your stand is a really useful way of doing it. Again, I've got links to people that can help you with this, but it's just something to bear in mind, that it's a really useful way of doing it, is measure to start with. And also you can then track from year on year from every boat show exactly how you're improving, which, you know, is just really useful. I think this is the waste is obviously the most visible. It's the one that everyone sees. I think it's really important that you ask yourself for every single physical item you bring onto the stand, what can I do to reduce waste? Like, you just really ask your question, like, do I need that on the stand? So, so you're going down this, you know, in terms of the questions that you should be asking yourself is this item really needed? Are there any other suppliers out there that either use recyclable packaging or use much less packaging? So if you are buying stuff for your stand, bearing that in mind, packaging is part of that. How is it going to get to you? Are you able to eat in, you know, are you able to take half an hour off at lunch break and just go and actually sit somewhere, you know, in a coffee shop at the boat show that can give you, you know, like a china plate to eat off, rather than, you know, actually taking that time, which is really good for you anyway to have time out. So I think I love this idea anyway, but you know, actually using their china mugs or whatever else and giving it back to them afterwards. Or these amazing reusable lunch boxes. There's so many companies now that will literally hand you the sandwich over the counter and you can bung it straight into a reusable lunch box. So it's really encouraging you and your team to, if you can't sit down and enjoy from some china plates, then can you bring in a lunchbox that you can reuse? If you are bringing your own items, consider how you package them up. So if it's something that you've already got that you're bringing to the boat show, you know, what kind of packaging are you using? You know, has it been reused over and over time? You know, more and more? Is it durable? Is it made from recyclable material? That's a huge element. Those are really key parts. Those three things is reusability, durability, and what material it's made from. And the other thing is, where are the recycling bins at the boat show? It sounds so obvious, but it's, you know, working out where that is and making sure all your teams know where they are and where to put stuff if you have got recycling, and not just choosing the easy option of a black bin if it's nearby. The final thing is choosing the right suppliers. Thank God these days you've got such an amazing selection of suppliers to run through. So these are just a checklist of things to look out for when you're looking for suppliers. You know, have they got a packaging reduction policy in place? Do they use environmentally friendly materials? So if you do throw it away, it doesn't end up in landfill and rots for 500 years. Are they operated by 100% renewable energy? It's an amazing way to see if a company's starting on the sustainability transition, where they're a good supplier to work with. Can you tell the carbon footprint from your order? So quite often what I got with the graphics from the Seacourt team, I just said, what's the carbon footprint of creating this graphic? And they literally gave it to me. So a lot of companies are starting to think like that. So it helps you calculate your impact. Offer a return scheme for your product. So basically, as I said, like the graphics again, and T-Mill t-shirt brand, can you Do they take those products back at the end of life so they can be recycled, so that again they don't end up in landfill? Do they have a zero waste landfill policy? Do they themselves believe that you need to reduce waste? Is there a rentable option? Can you rent stuff from them rather than necessarily having to buy it? And also there's a huge part is like, you know, are you absolutely sure that there's no human rights abuse in their supply chain? A company will normally be able to tell you that. And ask them if you can't find that information. And then the final 12th point is bring your customers with you on the journey. If you are all using reusable mugs, encourage all your customers to as well. Ask them to bring it along. Maybe that could be a nice thing, is that you can, I don't know, fill up their reusable mug with some rum punch. I'm just thinking of the guys at Sailing Holidays. Is it Sailing Holidays or Nissos Charters? One of them was always renowned for their rum punches, you know, actually getting them to bring along their reusable mugs to come for a rum punch party or something. Now, I don't know whether that's possible at the NEC, but it's that kind of thing. It's like tying that in. Get them to think about the transport to and from the show. Really encourage them to bring their own bags to carry purchases rather than, you know, and also making it easier for them to carry anything around. And, you know, also it's really down that only buy what they actually need. Now, this is a really interesting topic and maybe something for a much wider piece around, you know, not driving to people buy quick purchases that will probably won't be used anyway. But that's I'm really sorry, that probably is a bit complicated, and I'll go into that kind of element at a later date. But those are my 12 points. This is my email address, alexis@greenair.com. So if you have any questions regarding this, absolutely feel free to drop me a line. Yes, and I'll fingers crossed I'll be able to help you.